The 1970s weren't just the golden years of hockey, they were its wild frontier. The ice wasn't just a playing surface, it was a battleground where giants clashed, sticks splintered, and tempers burned hotter than the arena lights. Every hit echoed like thunder, every fight drew blood and roars from the crowd. It was raw, primal, and beautiful in its brutality. But here's the shocking truth. Behind the skill and the slapshot stood men who weren't just tough, they were inhumanly strong. They bent rules, shattered helmets, and redefined pain. And as the world watched, a new breed of warrior emerged. The kind who could turn a game into a war with a single shift. If you think today's NHL is tough, wait until you see what's coming next. These weren't just players, they were warriors who turned the ice into a battlefield. Before we dive deeper, hit like if you think hockey's golden era still hits harder than anything we see today, because the stories you're about to hear, they only get more brutal from here. Number 10, Larry Robinson. At number 10 stands a man whose size alone could silence a crowd. Larry Robinson, with the 6'4". Colossus, who anchored the Montreal Canadiens dynasty. Known as Big Bird, he wasn't just strong, he was immovable. Born in Winchester, Ontario, Robinson entered the NHL in 1972 after being drafted in 1971 and immediately brought something rare to the game, a blend of brute force and almost unsettling composure. While others fought to prove their toughness, Robinson didn't need to. His calm stare and slow, deliberate stride across the blue line said everything. When he hit you, it wasn't just contact, it was collision, and his checks became the stuff of legend. Teammates spoke of the impact Robinson had on defense, making his zone a place attackers dreaded entering. But here's what most fans never realized. Behind that quiet demeanor was a man capable of sheer devastation. Robinson's defensive play became iconic through countless key moments in the playoffs, where his hits and composure could swing momentum in an instant. The Montreal Forum often erupted after his well-timed checks or game-changing defensive stops. He didn't raise his voice, didn't throw punches. He simply ended shifts. Opponents didn't just avoid his stick, they avoided his shadow. That was Robinson's secret weapon, his restraint. He didn't need chaos to command fear. His game was clean, clinical, and terrifyingly efficient. He'd glide backward, bait an attacker, and then explode with controlled physicality, flattening them before they even realized what happened. Off the ice, he was polite, even soft-spoken. On the ice, he was the storm that never lost control. Coaches built entire defensive systems around his presence, trusting that one Robinson hit could swing momentum faster than any goal. By the time the Canadiens captured their fourth cup of the decade in 1979, Robinson wasn't just respected, he was mythic. Players said skating into his zone felt like crossing into enemy territory. And yet, for all his dominance, he never had to prove himself with his fists. He let the ice remember instead. But if Larry Robinson was the calm before the storm, the next man was the storm itself, a human hammer whose fists could change the course of a game in seconds. Number 9, Dave, the Hammer. Schultz. The name alone sent chills through locker rooms across the league. Dave the Hammer Schultz. He wasn't just a player, he was a statement. Born in Saskatchewan and forged in the chaos of the minor leagues, Schultz entered the NHL in the early 1970s with one mission: make opponents regret every shift. When the Philadelphia Flyers unleashed him as part of their notorious Broad Street Bullies, the league had never seen anything like it. Schultz didn't play hockey the traditional way, he enforced it. Every whistle, every hit, every glare carried the threat of something explosive. By 1974, he'd carved his name into infamy, racking up 472 penalty minutes in a single season. A record so wild, it still stands untouched half a century later. That wasn't just aggression, it was chaos weaponized. But here's where it gets shocking. Behind the brawls and bloodied knuckles, Schultz was one of the smartest intimidators the sport has ever seen. He understood timing, psychology, and performance. Every fight had purpose. To shift momentum, to protect a teammate, to rattle an entire bench. When he dropped the gloves, the arena transformed into a Roman Colosseum, and the crowd fed on the spectacle. Opponents didn't just face Schultz, they faced the wrath of Philadelphia itself. What made him terrifying wasn't just his fists, it was his aura. Schultz carried himself with the swagger of a man who knew he controlled the temperature of every game. He could skate past a rival bench, grin, and watch them flinch. Even legends like Bobby Clarke and Bernie Parent admitted the Flyers dynasty wouldn't have existed without him. His fists built their foundation, his presence made them untouchable, and his fearlessness gave them a psychological edge few teams could withstand. And yet, for all his violence, Schultz wasn't chaos. He was precision wrapped in fury. He knew when to fight, when to stop, and how to leave a message that would linger long after the buzzer. He wasn't just enforcing the game, he was rewriting its rules through intimidation. But as brutal as Schultz was, the next man on our list didn't just fight. He fought with purpose, control, and the strength to dominate without ever losing his cool. Number 8. Terry O'Reilly. Few players in NHL history embodied raw, unrelenting grit like Terry O'Reilly, the man Boston fans still call their wrecking ball, in skates. Born in Niagara Falls, Ontario, and drafted by the Bruins in 1971, O'Reilly quickly became the living pulse of Boston's toughness. He wasn't the fastest or the flashiest, but every shift he played carried the intensity of a man defending sacred ground. His game wasn't built on elegance. It was built on fury, endurance, and loyalty. When O'Reilly hit, he didn't just finish his checks. He announced them. Opponents braced for the impact seconds before it came, and by then it was already too late. But here's the shocking part. Beneath the chaos, O'Reilly was astonishingly disciplined in his aggression. In 1978, during a notorious clash with the New York Rangers, a brawl broke out that spilled into the stands, and O'Reilly, without hesitation, vaulted the glass to defend a teammate who'd been attacked by a fan. It wasn't just violence, it was instinct. That moment defined his legend. Fearless, loyal, and utterly uncontainable. The league fined him, suspended him, condemned him publicly, but in Boston, he became a hero. Fans didn't see a rule breaker, they saw a warrior defending family. What made O'Reilly different from the average bruiser was his endurance. He wasn't a one-dimensional enforcer. He could score, skate for hours, and still be the first into a corner battle. His motor never stopped. Coaches said if hockey were a war, Terry would be the soldier who never left the front line. He led the Bruins in penalty minutes 7 times, yet his leadership was undeniable. He captained the team later in his career, earning respect even from rivals who hated facing him. O'Reilly didn't talk about intimidation. He was intimidation. Every glance, every shove, every swing of his stick carried intent. He turned hockey into trench warfare, blending brute strength with a code of loyalty that his teammates never forgot. But if O'Reilly was Boston's wrecking ball, the next man was something different, a force of nature who combined strength with grace and made dominance look effortless. Number 7, Clark Gillies. When you talk about the perfect fusion of power and poise in 1970s hockey, one name rises above the rest. Clark Gillies, the beating heart and iron backbone of the New York Islanders. Gillies was a paradox in skates, equal parts gentleman and gladiator. Drafted by the Islanders in 1974, he earned the nickname Jethro for his rugged Saskatchewan roots and easygoing demeanor off the ice. But once the puck dropped, the transformation was immediate. Gillies wasn't there to dance or dazzle. He was there to dominate. Every stride carried menace. Every check was a statement. Gillies established himself as one of the toughest players in the NHL early in his career, notably becoming the Islanders' chief enforcer during the late 1970s and early 1980s. In the 1980 playoffs, Gillies notably took on Boston's tough player Terry O'Reilly multiple times, helping fuel the Islanders' march to their first Stanley Cup. The crowd went wild. The Islanders' bench erupted. Overnight, Gillies transformed from promising rookie to full-blown enforcer. That role didn't just change games, it shaped the culture of the franchise. From that point on, nobody took liberties with the New York Islanders, yet Gillies' brilliance wasn't confined to his fists. He was a powerhouse who could play on the top line, often beside Mike Bossy and Brian Trottier, using his body to create space and his strength to protect the puck like a fortress. His presence gave the Islanders swagger, that rare confidence born from knowing your teammates were safe under his watch. Coaches trusted him with every critical shift because Gillies didn't lose control, he weaponized it. He was the calm eye of every storm, and when provoked, he unleashed destruction with surgical precision. By the late 1970s, he wasn't just an enforcer. He was the template for the modern power forward. Gillies proved that strength could coexist with grace, that violence could serve purpose. But if Gillies was the silent guardian of Long Island, the next man was chaos incarnate, a mustachioed menace who didn't just fight for control of the game, he fought everyone in it. We're only halfway through this list, and the intensity's already off the charts. But trust me, the real monsters are still ahead. From men who shattered bones to those who shattered records, the next names aren't just strong, they're mythic. If you're loving this deep dive into hockey's wildest decade, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell, because what comes next will make you question what human toughness really means. Number 6, John Wensync. In a decade overflowing with tough guys, few carried a presence as instantly recognizable, or as feared, as John Wensync, the Bruins' mustachioed enforcer whose scowl alone could empty a bench. Born in Ontario and raised in the rugged tradition of Boston hockey, Wensync wasn't just another brawler in black and gold. He was the embodiment of intimidation. At 6 feet tall and 200 pounds of compact fury, he wasn't the biggest man on the ice, but strength radiated from him like static before a storm. Every opponent who lined up opposite him knew that one wrong move could end in a bruising encounter they'd remember for weeks. And then came the moment that turned Wensync into legend, the 1977 showdown against the Minnesota North Stars. After dropping forward Alex Pires with a clean, devastating punch, Wensync didn't just celebrate. No, he skated, slowly, deliberately, toward the entire Minnesota bench. With blood still hot in his veins, he pointed his glove at the opposing players and barked, "Who's next?" The crowd went silent. The cameras froze on his glare, and not a single North Star moved. It was one of the most iconic acts of defiance in NHL history. A single player challenging an entire team and winning the psychological war without throwing another punch. That moment wasn't just shocking, it was symbolic of everything Wensync represented. Fearless, unapologetic, and built for chaos. But here's the twist. Behind that menacing exterior was a player who could actually play. Wensync wasn't just muscle. He had speed, awareness, and surprising finesse. During the 1978-79 season, he scored 28 goals, a staggering total for a man best known for breaking faces, not records. His ability to shift from brawler to playmaker kept opponents guessing and terrified. Wensync wasn't a villain. He was a necessary force in a brutal era, the kind of player who made his teammates stand taller and his opponents second-guess every check. His mustache became his symbol, his fights became folklore, and his name became shorthand for fearless hockey. But while Wensync's chaos defined Boston's brand of strength, further north there was a player who proved that true toughness didn't always come from fury. Sometimes it came from quiet, unshakable control. Number 5. Berea Saling. In the violent cauldron of 1970s NHL hockey, where blood was currency and respect was earned with bruises, one man crossed an ocean to change everything. Berea Saling, the Swedish trailblazer, wasn't just stepping into a new league, he was stepping into a war zone. When he joined the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1973, most North American players viewed Europeans as fragile, fancy skaters who couldn't handle the punishment of the NHL. Saling heard every insult. Soft, finesse player, not built for this. But from the moment he laced up for Toronto, he made one thing clear. He wasn't here to fit in, he was here to fight back. And fight he did. Night after night, Saling was targeted, hacked, cross-checked, and punched simply for daring to be different. Opponents went after him like hunters chasing prey. But here's the shocking truth. Saling didn't just survive that brutality. He thrived in it. Instead of shrinking from contact, he embraced it. Broken noses, bloodied lips, and scarred skin became his armor. By the mid-1970s, he was logging 28 to 30 minutes a night, leading the Leafs in ice time while playing against the league's biggest and meanest forwards. His endurance was legendary. His recovery, superhuman. He'd take a slash that would sideline most players, then skate back out smiling. Saling's strength wasn't just in his body, it was in his resolve. He played the game with grace and humility, but beneath that calm exterior burned an unbreakable spirit. He became the first European defenseman to be named to the NHL first All-Star team, proving that toughness wasn't about where you were born, it was about what you were made of. His courage cracked open the door for generations of European players who followed, players who no longer had to apologize for their style or heritage. Teammates said Saling didn't need to shout to command respect. His blood on the ice did the talking. He changed the way the league viewed European players forever, redefining strength as endurance and heart, not just muscle and fists. But if Saling's toughness was silent and enduring, the next man on our list was the exact opposite. Loud, explosive, and utterly unstoppable. A living tempest, whose strength came with fury and fire. Number 4. Tiger Williams. In an era where toughness was currency, Tiger Williams was the NHL's unbreakable vault. Born in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, Williams didn't just play hockey. He treated every shift like a declaration of war. He wasn't the biggest or the most graceful, but what he lacked in finesse, he made up for in pure, explosive ferocity. From the moment he entered the league in the mid-1970s, opponents learned quickly that Tiger didn't skate around problems. He skated through them. His glare alone could start a fight, his hits could end one, and his reputation preceded him long before he touched the puck. By the late 1970s, Tiger had earned a title no one could take away. The most penalized man in NHL history. Season after season, he led the league in penalty minutes, wearing the chaos like a crown. But here's the shocking twist. Tiger wasn't just a brawler. In 1980, he scored 35 goals, proving that he could dominate with skill as easily as with violence. He wasn't one-dimensional, he was unpredictable. One shift, he'd crush you into the boards. The next, he'd deke past your defense and score on a breakaway, then celebrate with his iconic stick ride, gliding across the ice like a gunslinger on parade. That balance of fury and finesse made him one of the most electrifying players the league had ever seen. He thrived on energy, the roar of the crowd, the hate from the opposition, the blood and adrenaline of the moment. He called himself A hockey player first, a fighter second, and somehow managed to embody both at once. His teammates knew that with Tiger on the ice, no one dared take liberties. Even the dirtiest hitters thought twice before touching a Maple Leaf or Canuck when Williams was watching. But Tiger's fire wasn't without consequence. He lived every game like it might be his last, skating on the razor's edge between genius and madness. And yet, through it all, he remained one of the most beloved showmen the NHL ever produced. Part warrior, part entertainer, all chaos. Still, for all of Tiger's wild energy, the next man on our list took strength to an entirely different level. Not through rage or rebellion, but through sheer, immovable dominance. Number 3, Bob Gassoff. There are players who earn respect, and then there are those who command it the instant they touch the ice. Bob Gassoff was the latter, the iron wall of the St. Louis Blues, a man whose very presence could change the tone of a game. Born in Quesnel, British Columbia, Gassoff joined the Blues in the mid-1970s and wasted no time making an impression. Standing 5'10" and weighing around 190 pounds, he wasn't the league's biggest defenseman, but he was arguably its most fearless. Every time he took the ice, fans could sense it. Something dangerous was about to happen. Here's what set him apart. Gassoff didn't just hit to stop a play, he hit to send a message. His checks were seismic, his gloves came off without hesitation, and his eyes held the cold focus of a soldier. Teammates said he trained like a Marine, weighted vests, uphill sprints, endless sparring, and he played like one too. In practice, he pushed himself past exhaustion. In games, he pushed others into the boards. It was said that Gassoff could ragdoll players 50 pounds heavier than him, tossing them aside as if they were made of paper. When he fought, he didn't waste energy on showmanship. It was pure, methodical destruction. And then came the shocking truth of his legend. He was gone too soon. In 1977, after just 4 NHL seasons, Gassoff died tragically in a motorcycle accident at only 24 years old. The news hit St. Louis like a thunderclap. Coaches, teammates, and even rivals mourned a player who was destined to become one of the defining enforcers of his era. His jersey number 3 was retired by the Blues, not for what he achieved in years, but for the impact he made in moments. In those short seasons, he had already become a cult figure, a symbol of uncompromising strength and courage. Bob Gassoff's legend isn't just about toughness, it's about what might have been. Had fate given him more time, he might have redefined the very role of the enforcer in modern hockey. But where Gassoff's story ended too soon, the next man's story burned brighter. The enforcer, who did become the defining force of a generation, feared by everyone who dared cross his path. Number 2, Ted Green. Before helmets were standard, before players even considered safety equipment as essential, there was one man who faced the storm bareheaded and unflinching. Ted Green, better known as Terrible Ted. To call him tough would be an understatement. Green didn't just play through pain, he stared it in the eye and dared it to do worse. Born in Manitoba, he joined the Boston Bruins in the early 1960s and carried his ferocious spirit into the 1970s, embodying everything that made that decade hockey's most unforgiving era. Green was the kind of player who treated bruises like badges and broken bones like inconveniences. When you lined up across from him, you knew you were in for a war. And then came the moment that forever etched his name into NHL folklore. The 1969 stick fight with Wayne Maki, one of the most infamous incidents in hockey history. In a split second of chaos, Green was struck across the head, fracturing his skull and leaving him clinging to life. Doctors weren't sure he'd walk again, let alone play. But here's where the story turns shocking. Ted Green didn't retire. He didn't even hesitate. After months of recovery and a titanium plate in his head, he returned to the ice, as fearless and ferocious as ever. When most men would have hung up their skates, Green tightened his laces and came back swinging. That comeback wasn't just a return, it was a statement. His survival became a symbol of defiance, the embodiment of old-school hockey's brutal resilience. After his time with Boston, he took his warrior spirit to the WWHA's Edmonton Oilers, where he became both a mentor and enforcer, protecting young players who would later become legends, including a rookie named Wayne Gretzky. Green's presence in the locker room was legendary. Teammates said he carried an aura that demanded respect. Ted Green wasn't just strong, he was unbreakable. His toughness went beyond muscle, it lived in his refusal to yield. He redefined courage in a sport already built on pain. But even a man like Terrible Ted would tip his helmet, or in his case, his scarred skull, to the one who stands above all. Because next comes the number one force of the 1970s, a player so powerful, even legends braced themselves when he took the ice. Number 1, Bob Battleship Kelly. And finally, at number 1, the immovable object himself, Bob Battleship Kelly. When people talk about the brutality and beauty of 1970s hockey, they're talking about men like Kelly, relentless, fearless, and forged in the fires of Philadelphia's most violent dynasty. Standing 5'10" and built like a tank, he wasn't just a player, he was a presence. Every shift, every hit, every stare carried the weight of the Broad Street Bullies' reputation. Kelly was the living embodiment of Flyers hockey, raw power cloaked in orange and black. He didn't just play the game, he hunted it, bending its pace and tone to his will. But here's what shocked everyone. Bob Kelly wasn't just muscle. Beneath the chaos and fists was a player who understood momentum better than almost anyone. In the 1975 Stanley Cup Finals, it was Kelly's thunderous hit on a Buffalo defenseman that completely changed the rhythm of the series. The Sabres had momentum, the crowd was surging, and then, bang, Kelly leveled his target with a hit that could have cracked the boards in half. Within minutes, the tide turned. The Flyers regained control, and soon after they captured their second consecutive Stanley Cup. It was the perfect display of his true power. He didn't just stop plays, he shifted destiny. Opponents dreaded his name. They called him Battleship because trying to move him was like skating into a wall made of iron and bad intentions. His endurance was freakish. He could grind for hours, drop the gloves when necessary, and still have the energy to crash the net on the next shift. Coaches relied on him not just to protect stars like Clark and Leach, but to ignite the team when the air went cold. He was the human spark plug of the Flyers' reign, as feared as he was respected. Bob, Battleship Kelly, wasn't just part of the Flyers' story. He was their story. His fists were their shield, his hits their heartbeat, his will their legacy. The 1970s belonged to warriors like him, men who turned hockey into legend. And though that era has faded into history, its echoes remain. In every hard hit, every clenched fist, and every roar from the crowd that still craves the spirit of the 1970s. So, which of these 1970s warriors shocked you the most? Did your favorite enforcer make the cut? Or is there a name we missed? Someone who still deserves a place among hockey's hardest legends. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let the debate begin. The 1970s weren't just an era, they were a battlefield of heart, fists, and fury, and every story still echoes through the ice today. If you love diving deep into the most brutal, awe-inspiring chapters of sports history, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because the next episode takes the fight to an all-new level.